Alrighty, so the final section that we're covering is 33 habits of wealthy people. And this was not actually intended to be a part of the course when I first was putting it together, but as I was reading up on all these things, again and again I kept coming across different of these habits, and so I was just kind of throwing them off to the side for myself, but I found it pretty interesting, so I figured I would share them with you. So out of the 33 habits, you'll find that most wealthy people have a lot of them, if not all of them. And they are things that understand that they develop over time. Like if you don't have them right now, it's not a big deal. I didn't have quite a few of them, but I do have most of them now. Number one, and I'm just gonna, this is not in order whatsoever, by the way. I just, we're gonna look at the list and say, here's 1 through 33. All right, number one, 81% of wealthy people keep a daily to-do list and check things off as they go. All right, it's very common for them to do that. Not everybody does that, right? Number two, wealthy people are goal-oriented, meaning they literally write, and they have, of course, the goals in life to get to a certain point, but those goals are written down and they're pursued relentlessly and tracked regularly, keep on top of their goals. Number three, they take a long-term view of life, thinking of their future self all the time. It isn't just about today. It isn't even about tomorrow or the next week or the next month. It's next year, it's 5 years, it's 10 years. It's what am I going to do when I retire? Okay? They take a very long-term view of life. Number four, they're always learning. 88% of wealthy people spend at least 30 minutes a day either reading a book, listening to an audiobook, researching on the internet, maybe watching a video about it, but topics that are enriching them and educating them in some way or another. And those top topics, the ones that they study, it's not just, Netflix, watching Netflix doesn't qualify, unless it's maybe a documentary. But top topics are going to be things like personal development, finance, reading up on current events, and I thought this one was interesting since it was my major, but 51% of them read up on history. That's like the go-to, and then biographies of successful people. All right, number five, they tend to make time to think alone, to have like alone time where they sit down and they just kind of process whatever the next task is or what they're aiming for, but they find time to be solitary for that. Sixth one is action. They, again, like we just talked in the last section, they act on their thoughts. They have an idea of what they'd like to do, and they go out and they start making it happen. And they don't just do that now and again, they do it consistently. So it's consistent action. Number seven, they are disciplined. They build habits. And they can stay consistent because those tasks that they have, they become habits. They become so much of what they do on a regular basis, eventually they don't have to think about it anymore. And so that kind of helps them stay disciplined. They're consistent in general. They're working towards these things on a regular basis, so they stay disciplined. Number eight, they have a strong work ethic. They're willing to put in a lot of hours. They're willing to sit there and not be like, oh, it's the end of the shift or the end of the day, I guess I'm done, I'm out of here. No, they keep working and keep pushing forward. All right. Number nine, they're responsible. They hold themselves accountable for their actions. They're dependable people. If they promise you something, they don't shirk that commitment. So you can see it even in mundane things. They respond to text, emails, phone calls. They're the kind of person who picks up. They typically go above and beyond while they're at work, and they don't really have the attitude, and you'll see this more as you go out in the work world, of that's not really my job description. That's somebody else to deal with. Like, it's like, no, whatever task is out there, let's take care of it. Number 10, they don't procrastinate. They tackle that to-do list, what we were talking about, pretty much every day, and they set personal artificial deadlines for themselves, things that don't really matter other than to themselves. And that can be in fitness, like, oh, I've got to get to this next milepost, or else I didn't do it right, or I got to run for this period of time. But just within themselves too, if they're making like investing goals, they need to get to a certain point, and sometimes it's like a mini goal that gets to the next one. Things like that. They tend to pay their bills immediately. They clean up their mess right when they make it. So yeah, they don't procrastinate. Number 11 is they are competitive. Okay, yeah, I don't need to say anything if you guys don't know what competition is. They're very competitive. Number 12 is they're frugal. And what I mean by frugal, again, is that because you've got people who are rolling big and spending big, right? but they're spending less than what they make, like we've talked about. And what's interesting is that they get to a point later on in life where they have enough wealth, it kind of negates the need for them to continue to budget and to think like, ooh, can I afford this? Does this fit within my budget for whatever things are? Partially because the frugality that they built up as a habit when they are younger is now so automatic, they're looking for the deal each time. They're not going to waste their money. They don't even think about it. It's like, yes, of course, I'll be frugal. They limit their entertainment costs. They don't accumulate credit card debt. And I thought this was interesting, they spend less than 15% of their income on food, even when they're first starting out. And when you say food, you're like, well, food shouldn't be that much of your budget anyway. But when you start thinking about like going out for dinner, and going and getting a coffee at Starbucks every day, that adds up and usually blows that 15% out of the water. The other thing that they also do, number 13, is they keep their housing and their car costs low. 25% or less of their income goes towards housing, and they almost never lease a car, which is basically borrowing the car, paying a bunch of money for it, and then giving it back. It's really, really dumb. I won't go into the details of it, but 94%, that's a big percentage, 94% of wealthy people just buy the car. And some of them, if they have the means, they just buy it outright rather than paying interest on it. 14, they save and they invest aggressively. And I emphasize aggressively as in, not as in they're going for aggressive, really crazy speculative stocks that might collapse on them. No, it means that they're putting a lot of their income towards that goal. They put as much as they can to get there as quickly as they can. They do use index funds quite a bit. That's pretty common. But the very best and the very wealthiest investors don't diversify as much. They don't necessarily go for the index fund. They'll tend to go towards a stock that they really believe in, but they're very well educated. In fact, some of the smartest people have said diversification, which most people preach is like this is the way to do it, is basically admitting your own ignorance of a company. But the thing is, it's okay. If you're not going to spend your life studying stocks, admit your ignorance and go for something that's easier, like an index fund. I'm ignorant on a lot of things. I haven't put it a bunch of time, so it's okay to diversify and protect yourself. But if you're really, really going to go for it, the people who do this the best honestly don't diversify that much. They actually go out and they pick 2 or 3 really good stocks or companies they believe in, and they put all their money in that. 15, they develop multiple streams of income. We've talked about that before, where you've got your job and you've got something else that's creating some sort of passive income. Maybe you get to a point where your job is your business and you can get somebody else to run that for you. So they try to get many sources of income coming in. 16, they invest in real estate. Very common. Number 17 is they don't go out and just follow their passions. They follow what makes sense. And a lot of people will preach to you, especially when you're young and in school, is like, oh, find what you're passionate about and then you'll be able to make money off of it. That can be true if you're lucky enough that it's something that's going to make you money, but in a lot of cases it's not. So do what makes sense, and allow yourself to follow your passions with the money that you've made later on when you've got the free time for it. 18, they're always on the lookout for new ideas and entrepreneurial ideas, things like that can kind of be the next step forward. 19, they don't tend to follow the crowd. They create things that crowds follow. There's plenty of critics, as you know, in anybody's life. And when you tell them you have got this great idea and you're going to move forward with this business venture or whatever, there's going to be a handful of people who pop up and be like, that's never going to work. And these folks, they ignore critics like that. They don't follow the crowd. Number 20, they're risk takers. Although they're calculated risk takers. They're not just jumping off a bridge without knowing what's at the bottom, And what I thought was pretty interesting is that, again, the very wealthiest people actually sometimes take huge risks. They put absolutely everything on the line for one particular venture. They'll put their life savings, everything they've got, they'll get a loan on their house, and if this thing fails, they're screwed. They're completely out of everything. They're back to square one. But honestly, the people who have done the best and the wealthiest billionaires are the ones who take the craziest risks. And if you start reading biographies on these people, you see again and again that's very common. I'm not suggesting you do that. Leave that to the crazy risk takers who make it, because I'm sure there's plenty of people who've tried the same thing and have failed. But do take risks. I mean, life is risky. You can't just sit back and go for just the easiest one. Take some risks, but make them sure that they're calculated. That being said, number 21 might be a surprise, but they don't gamble, because that's a different kind of risk. That's just That's chance. That's not something that they can affect with their knowledge and their work ethic. They're just gambling, so they don't gamble. 22, perseverance. Perseverance in the sense that they are resilient with any kind of setback that they run into. Instead of just giving up, as soon as they run into a wall or something that's telling them, or somebody is telling them they can't move forward, they just try harder or in a different way. And that kind of goes back to those risk takers. They'll put it all on the line, they'll run into roadblocks, and they'll just keep rolling forward. They'll push and they'll push and they'll push. Number 23, they're optimistic. They have an overall positive mental outlook. Number 24, they accept failures as a learning experience, and they don't blame others for things that don't go their way. That's part of, again, kind of goes into the attitude of optimism as well as perseverance. Number 25, they are open to listening. They take in feedback and criticism, and they might not always like it, and they might not always agree, but they're open to it. They're open to the idea that they could be wrong. 26, they control their emotions. They only about 6%, and this I thought was very interesting, only about 6% can constantly air their thoughts, as in like, thought comes in, it comes out my mouth. Only 6% of them do that, where people who are in poverty, they say about 69% of those do that, where something comes in and out it comes. I thought that was very interesting, that they tend to hold back. And I don't know if those, it's just one study, I don't know how accurate that is, but I thought that was at least interesting that there's that big of a gap there in how they operate. Number 27, they network. And what I mean by network is they hang out with people who are like-minded and help them stay the course and provide other opportunities. Number 28, they have mentors. About 93% of them have a mentor, somebody that they can kind of rely on, who is somebody they can go back to and ask questions from and help guide them. Number 29, they help others succeed. They reach down after they've met their success, they go back and they help others get there as well. Number 30, 72% of them volunteer regularly, on a regular basis. 31.
Volunteer, what do you mean by that?
Volunteer as in they go, like, I'll take the most common example, like a soup kitchen, or something like that, where they go and they give their time to a community effort to help people out. So 72% of them go out there and they volunteer their time for some sort of charitable something or other. 31, most of them rise early and get up out of bed early. Number 32, they tend to eat well and exercise regularly. Just something that most of them do. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with their consistency and their discipline. And then finally, number 33, time is precious to them. They understand how valuable it is. So they don't really spend a lot of time watching TV, and they don't spend almost any time on social media. It's very limited what they do there. All right, that's all of the 33.